Do you currently live on a gypsy site?
Yes, I live on my own private site down in Ashcott, near Bridgewater.
How long have you been helping the gypsy community?
Most of my adult life, but for the past 20 years I've really gone into it and done a lot of planning and anything to help my community to lead a better life.
What do you do to help them?
I submit planning applications and take it from A to B, from the beginning to the end. I also get involved in education, access to healthcare, evictions from roadside, you name it, I'm involved in it.
Do you think that gypsies in the local community are treated fairly?
I think once they're accepted for what they are, the local communities do get on very well with families. It's a lot to do with it is also our attitude as well, because we like to be private and mind our own business and live a sort of a quiet, secluded life. Yes, I get on quite well in my community, and most of the families that I've got planning for, where there's been a big hooray, gypsies in the area, in the end, once they've got planning, they are accepted, and it works out quite well.
Do you think that are racism towards the gypsy community?
Do I think there is racism towards the gypsy community? Yes, I do. It's an everyday occurrence. I got to the age of 60 when I realised I'd been racially abused all my life. But today, we haven't got to put up with being racially abused. We have got laws today that anyone that deliberately abuses you racially can end up in court. And we're doing our best to stamp things out like that, because it makes for worse relationships. You know, if you can take it on the chin and think, okay, so you've called me a dirty gypsy, but I am a much better person than what you are. I know I'm not dirty, you know. It just think they're silly people because they got the wrong idea of what we are.
Do you think that prejudice towards the gypsy community has gotten better or worse?
I think it's got worse, for the simple reason that most planning to do with gypsies today becomes very high profile. We get campaigners, we get people really objecting and doing it very noisily, very loudly. We get very negative press reports, television reports. There is a great deal of prejudice out there still, and I think it's only through young people like yourself and education that maybe one day it will get better.
Do you think there's enough is done to communities to help gypsy families into socials?
There's lots of answers to that question. I found that gypsies that's been forced to live in housing because of lack of other provision, the majority do have a very, very hard time with having to hide their identity. We get cases practically every week where Romany families, gypsy families, has been gone into housing, and they've lived quite happily with their neighbours. And then all of a sudden one day the neighbours will discover that their next door neighbours are gypsies, and attitudes change within an hour. They can be, you know, quite nasty, quite violent, and everything they've learnt about them has gone out the window. They just think they're not humans anymore. That's a gypsy family next door.
What more do you think could be done to promote
integration?
Yeah.
I think we could play a big part in that ourselves. When you're living in villages or in housing, I think that we've got to start coming out, going to clubs, going to school meetings, going anywhere where we can say, I'd like to take part in that. I'd like to play darts for that team. I'd like to play hockey for that team. I'm a gypsy, but I think I could be a benefit to you. You know, I'd like to take part, because we've never done that. We've always ducked our heads down and think, you know, they wouldn't want us. That's not for us. But I've took a lot of steps over the last few years. I've become a member of the police diversity, which is unheard of in the gypsy race, because there's a kind of ongoing hatred and mistrust that's been going on for hundreds of years with us in the law. But I've actually took the step and said, right, I want to be a member of that. I want to know what you're doing, and how can I help to break barriers. That's the way forward, is to get in there, take part.
What problems or difficulties do you think young gypsies face in the local community and further afield?
It's a bit difficult for me at my age. I think the younger generation tend to get picked on, called names, and I think the worst thing about a gypsy is we will stick up for ourselves and retaliate. We won't be sort of really bullied too far before we retaliate back. But I've noticed in my village, they're not really accepting there's a new family there, and they're not really accepting that family. Maybe 10 years down the line, they say, oh, you know, they're not so bad living up there. But the children at the school, we have had to visit the school over one young lad, quite a young lad that was having a very hard time. He wasn't being really accepted with the teachers, fine, but not with the some of the youngsters of the village.
What more do you think could be done to stop racism towards gypsies?
I think that's one of my pet questions. Education. I think group education, like in schools, there's lots and lots of schools that haven't got gypsy children attending, that I think they should get young people like yourself or older people like myself to go in and do talks on our tradition, our culture, our customs, and our way of life. I think once they start understanding that we have a complete way of life, we are a race of people with our own ways, and we have an aversion to bricks and mortar. That's why we like to live our own lives on private sites and authority sites, where we can all be together and live the way that we should be living in our traditional way.